Hello and welcome. My name is Alyssa and this is Into the Heartwild. And today I am bringing you guys a review of Prince of Fools by Mark Lawrence. So I am currently working my way through the entire Mark Lawrence collection because I have them all. and I just finished, obviously, the Broken Empire trilogy that I spent 4 years avoiding. Don't do that. Don't do that. Anyways, so obviously I'm on to the next trilogy in the world, which would be the Red Queen's War. So if you are not aware of this, this series connects back to the Broken Empire, and I believe the other two series, Book of the Ancestor and the Book of the Ice, also connect back, and like they all take place in like the same world. I want to say for sure Book of Ancestor does, but I'm not 100% positive on the Book of Ice. But this one for sure does, because you go to Ancrath. So yeah. Now I have to say, when I initially started this book, the first couple of chapters was tough. It was tough. I'm not gonna lie. And it was tough because of Jalyn. This man, this guy right here, the main character. On one hand, I'm like, you're hilarious. And on the other hand, I'm like, you are so repulsive. I hope you fall off a cliff. And that is my honest feelings for him throughout the entire book. I just, one minute I was like, you're funny. The next I was like, please fall off a cliff. He makes it very hard to like enjoy the book, and I know that is something that Mark Lawrence is known for, but when it came to the Broken Empire, I actually really liked Jorg. He was just one of those, like, such a horrible character that I ended up liking him. He did a lot of bad things, a lot of terrible things, yeah, but I think the difference with Jalyn and Jorg is the approach of what kind of person they are. Because Jalyn, he is a coward through and through. And on top of that, he is also egotistical. And I don't like egotistical, like, men in general. And Jalyn is, like, the perfect example of one of them. And he looks at women as, like, objects and something to conquer. And I'm like, ew, gross. They're just something he can just sleep with real quick and go about his day. He doesn't have to worry about any kind of, aftermath or anything. Like, he doesn't care, They're just something he can use. And then his whole, like, spiel where he's like, I'm a coward. Like, first off, I do have to admit that to himself, he can admit he's a coward. And I do like that aspect about him, because there's a lot of times where a coward won't even admit to themselves that they're a coward, even internally. And Jalyn is at least like, I will run away before I ever decide to fight. And I have to say, I kind of like that aspect about him. Like, he knows. He knows he's a coward. He knows he is not meant for fighting and being in wars. He knows that he doesn't want anything to do with it, and he knows it scares him and that he cannot handle it. Like, so I do give his character building that credit. But because of his egotistical nature, he's so just repulsive. And I hate him. And the beginning of the book just felt like there was just really nothing to grab me, because it was just like, oh, look at me, I got caught in this girl's bedroom by her brother, and oh no, I had to run away, and oh, I wish I had my sleep, and I'm just gonna ignore everything that my grandma, the queen, says to me. And I'm just like, at least with Jorg, like, there was the whole, like, I'm gonna go do bad, terrible things. Like, this guy is just like, like, he made it so difficult to get interested in the story. And then Snorri Versnagerson shows up, and that man stole the story. That man stole the spotlight. He is, in comparison to Jalyn, Snorri is fantastic. He is amazing. He's a scary, tall barbarian who also has like the heart of gold, but not so much. Not so much, because he will go out and like commit murder, okay? But also his story. There was actually something to Snorri that made him interesting, where Jolin, he's just, I'm a prince. I can go sleep with people and run away from fights. And Snorri was like, I need to save my family. Like, Snorri had something going on in his life that was interesting. And so putting the two of them together and having them travel together was honestly a very interesting companionship to see, because the whole time in Jolin's head, because the story is told from Jolin's point of view, you know, he's just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. I'm being dragged against my will. I'm going to run away from this fight. And Snorri's just like, you can do it. You know, like he's so encouraging, like through the whole book, but he's also like, I have to get to where I gotta go to because I gotta save my family. You know? And then throughout the story, Snorri tells his past to Jolin, which does eventually start to help change Jolin, but not a lot. Like, it's one of those things where, like, Jolin's feelings only kind of change in regards to Snorri in general and Snorri's journey, whereas Jolin himself is still just exactly the same. He's just this repulsive piece of trash. So I do have to say it was kind of nice. Like, I kind of liked seeing the growth of their companionship and Jolin's feelings towards Snorri and Snorri's journey change. But outside of that, like, even by the end of the book, I was just like, is Jolin gonna fall off a cliff soon? Because I just didn't care about him at all. And, you know, like I said, Snorri stole the show. I loved him. Like, this felt more of, like, it felt to me more like Snorri was main character and Jolin was, like, that annoying side character who doesn't know how to go away. That was honestly how that felt to me. Now, as for, like, the plot and everything, I liked the idea of the dark and the light magic coming into play and who they were each attached to. Because it created a conflict between the characters of who they were attached to, and I did like that aspect. I do wish I had gotten to see just, like, a bit more of that connection. Like, we got like a fair amount of it, but I kind of wish it lasted a bit longer than how it was portrayed in the story, because there are, like, mechanics to it. So, like, during the sunrise and the sunset, like, between that super minimal amount of time, like, that's when, like, these spirits would, like, come into play. And so a lot of times conversations would get cut off, kind of thing. So I do kind of wish we got to see, like, a little bit more of that. The magic itself, that involved, like, a bond being accidentally created, but also not knowing if it really was accidentally created or if it was, like, purposely done. That was interesting. A good majority of the book involves traveling. So if that's not your jam, probably will struggle with this, honestly. The action, great as always. If there is one thing that Lawrence is good at, it is action. It ranges anywhere from, like, a quick explosion to bodies being ripped to pieces. There is also some definitely darker themes going on with it, because as you know, he is considered grimdark or whatever. I do have to say, for me personally, maybe I'm desensitized to a lot of the things that appear in grimdark at this point, that I was just kind of like, yeah, it's dark. You know, like, it did. I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, like, I think maybe I'm kind of desensitized to it because I'm used to seeing these type of themes running through grimdark books, which involve, like, children and babies. You know, like, I don't want to say I'm heartless. I just think I'm desensitized to it. But I also don't really have a lot of triggers when it comes to reading in general. So, yeah. I do have to say, the story around, like, the dead king and the unborn it was a little difficult to kind of grasp and understand at first for me, but I get it. Like, towards the end, it finally really started to make sense because it started to get explained better. I still have to say, the world kind of, like, throws me off sometimes when I remember that there's the builders, which are, like, because, like, this is, like, I want to say someone had described it as, like, a post-apocalyptic medieval fantasy thing. This has a lot of Norse stuff going on in it. So, like, Odin, Thor, Loki, like, they all exist in this world. But, like, there's these people called the Builders. Like, it goes more into it in the Broken Empire. But, yeah, I feel like calling it, like, a post-apocalyptic medieval kind of thing fits. Like, I want to say I heard someone explain this series like that. But, yeah, a lot of Norse inspiration in this series. Which I was not expecting because you didn't get a lot of that in Broken Empire at all. So, like, it did kind of throw me off at first because I was like, this is very Norse. Like, okay. But I ended up liking it because I do like Norse-inspired stories. One of the other little aspects I liked was seeing where this book tied into in the Broken Empire world, which puts it in the first book of the Broken Empire. Because while Jalin doesn't actually meet Jorg, he does see him interact with the brothers. I got so excited, you guys. Because in the Broken Empire, Macon is my favorite character. And Macon makes an appearance in here. It's like one page. It's like one page long, and I was so excited. But I was also more excited because I listened to the audiobook for these, and which helped because I did struggle in the beginning. But the narrator for this series has an older voice to him. And so when he spoke Makin's lines, I was like, that's the correct voice for Makin. Because the audiobook for The Broken Empire, when I read the last book, I didn't like the voice for Makin because he felt too young. And so I was very excited that, like, this one-page appearance by my favorite character had the correct voice of how I always imagined him in my head. And that made me so happy. But I got really excited seeing how this book, the events that are happening in this book, connect back into the Broken Empire, because I love seeing things like that when authors create, like, a big world and you get to see the crossover timestamps with each other. Because that also helps you figure out, like, the age difference between Jalin and Jorg, because Jalin is, like, I want to say, like, 20, maybe? And then Jorg, when he comes across them, he's, like, 15, I think? So you can see, like, the differences and kind of put together a timeline, which I thought was very interesting. Overall, like, the main plot of the story, it's very interesting. I want to see how it plays out, because it does involve, like, the Unborn, the Dead King, especially knowing that I finished the Broken Empire and how that one ends with the Dead King. I want to know how far in this series the Dead King will actually play into the series and where that goes and how Lawrence is going to handle that. I feel like there's something even greater at stake going on too, because, like, there's the light and the dark being played into this. So I will definitely see. I'm going to definitely keep going forward with it. It's fun. Snorri, best character. Oh, I do have to say, towards the end, we start to meet more of Vikings and everything, and I have to honestly say, they felt like caricatures of Vikings, which was kind of annoying, because, like, there were, like, a set of, like, 8 twins or something like that, and it just, something about it just felt more like he was poking fun at the idea of Vikings as opposed to, like, implementing the Vikings in general into the story. So that did kind of, like, grate on my nerves a little bit, because to me that's how they came off. And then they weren't really characters that were kind of, like, that really kind of stood out, you know? They definitely kind of felt like let's add a couple more characters in so we can kill off a bunch of characters so we don't have to kill off our 2 main characters just yet. They felt like filler characters, essentially. Now, emotion-wise, because there's a lot of you who are returning and those of you that might be new, I like when my books make me cry. That is one of the things I look forward to when I read a book. And while this didn't have me full-blown crying, Snorri's tales did pull at my heartstrings. It got me a few times. But ultimately, there wasn't really anything that was like earth-shattering, heartbreaking for me in it. So, and that's not a bad thing. You know, it's just something I look forward to when I read a book, because I apparently like to cry my eyes out when I read. But like I said, there were a couple emotional parts that did pop up through the story. One of the other writing devices that was used in this book, which I have started the second one and it's continuing over into that one. Snorri, Lawrence does this thing where Jolin will be like, oh, like, how did such and such happen? And instead of just like telling us how it happened, he does this thing where he goes, and then Snorri told me a tale. And then it switches over to this, hearing this story as if Jolin was recounting the story that Snorri told him to us. And I think it's very interesting because it pops up quite a few times in this one. And like I said, it's carried over into the next one. And for some reason, I really like it. I really like being told, and then Snorri started a tale. And I'm like, okay, like, what's his tale? Because it usually ends up breaking my heart. But it's just a very interesting writing device that I thought he used in this. And I'm pretty sure it's shown up in like other series too. But yeah, I thought it was interesting and I liked it. I like how I feel like he placed them very well. That is my thoughts on The Prince of Fools. I would say if you want to pick it up, just work your way past Jolin to the point to where you can meet Snorri. I think he's about like 4 chapters in when you meet him. Just work your way to him. You know, like Snorri makes the book worth it, because I think if Snorri wasn't present, I wouldn't have finished this, because there's nothing about Jolin's character in general that makes you think he should be the main character. He definitely just feels like he's that character who got thrown into a situation, but he's the main character. And you're just kind of like, why are you even here? Why are you here? So I do want to see if eventually why Jolin is caught up in all of this is explored and like told to me. I do hope that comes about, and I hope it's worth it, because right now you could remove him from the story and I wouldn't even notice. I wouldn't. Aside from the fact that, you know, the light and dark stuff kind of interact with each other between him and Snorri. That's probably about it. But yeah, those are my thoughts. They're a little wild, a little all over the place. I want to say I'm leaning in between a 3.5 and a 4 rating wise. I haven't decided which one I want to go with yet, but it's around in there. It's not a 5-star, but it's also not a 2-star. So I'm around like a 3.5 to a 4 with my general consensus. So yeah. If you have read this book and you enjoyed it, go ahead and drop a comment below. Let me know if you read it and you hated it. Go ahead and tell me. Like, I want to know. I do have to say it's one of the more lesser talked about Lawrence books. So if you guys have read it, if you've heard of it, anything, like, drop a comment. Let me know. Have a discussion. And like and subscribe, all those fun things. And I will talk to you next time. Bye.